Hey everybody. Yeah, I've got about, let me check. I got about 13 to 23 more minutes. You had the 10 minutes additional on my lunch. But I wanted to come out here and talk about something that, well, I was thinking about talking about some way or another, and that basically about this thing that Linkara at Atop the Fourth Wall talked about, and he actually addressed. You see, one of the things Linkara does on the side, excuse me, besides his primary, comic book reviews or Patreon reviews on Atop the Fourth Wall, one of the things Linkara does is he likes to do some side projects, like in this case, History of Power Rangers. Linkara, in case you guys don't know, is a huge fan of Power Rangers. Linkara, also known, whose real name I should say is Louis Lovehog, is a big Power Rangers fan. He grew up on them. So he's taken his time throughout the 10 years plus, the decade plus, if you will, that he's been doing this, to do look-backs, if you know, retrospectives on all the Power Rangers series in the franchise. One of them he talked about was Lost Galaxy. Now, here's what's interesting. He didn't mention this until he got to Lightspeed Rescue. When he was talking about Lightspeed Rescue and the two-part episode, Trakeena's Revenge. Now, apparently, according to what Louis Linkara said, the Lost Galaxy cast was promised a reunion movie. In other words, they were supposed to get basically a feature-length film, possibly direct-to-video, if not probably very limitedly a theatrical release that would inevitably be, probably about a week or so later, released on the home video and then maybe television. That's basically what the one thing that he mentioned, because what happened was during the crossover event for Trakeena's Revenge, several of the cast members kind of walked off. Basically, this was due to the fact that one of the main plot points of this two-parter was the Red Ranger, Carter Grayson, befriending a little girl. Can't think of her name right now. But a little girl whose mom gets kidnapped by Trakeena, and whose mom is getting her life force, along with many other humans, adult humans' life force, drained out of her. Now, like I said, what Lewis pointed out was the original actress for Trakeena did show up to reprise her role. And the guy that portrayed Leo, the Lost Galaxy Red Ranger, walked during filming, which kind of indicates why there are some scenes with and without him. And all this was because that the young actress that was playing that little girl, I think her name was Heather, that was the little girl's name, reportedly she was getting paid more than the established Lost Galaxy cast that was being brought back for this crossover. So that kind of didn't sit well where Trakeena, the actress who portrayed the original actress who portrayed Trakeena, or even the guy that portrayed Leo. Now, I'm not sure about Leo entirely, if that was mostly the reasoning, I don't know. Leo's reasoning could be the fact that instead of getting the reunion movie they were promised, they were given a crossover. But speaking of that reunion movie, now, I will say this, it is kind of a shame that we didn't get that, because honestly, if you're going to work with people, if you're going to promise the cast of a popular show sitcom or whatever, that down the line they're going to get a reunion movie because their incarnation of a franchise was successful and a lot of people enjoyed watching. You know, you got to keep that promise or else it makes you look bad. You know, it really makes you look bad in the end. Now, again, I don't know any of the specifics or details, and as far as I know, Louis Lovehog, Linkara, doesn't know all the specifics or details either. But one has to wonder exactly what the Lost Galaxy movie would have been like. One has to wonder. Now, some could say that Lost Galaxy already had a movie, if not two. Lost Galaxy had a movie with the premiere. I think it was like, 2, 3, 4 parts that they had on that one? And then some could say they had a movie with the season finale or the Lost Galaxy finale. And that might be true. Those could be comprised and looked at as feature films, or at least full-length movies taking place in the Lost Galaxy universe. But still, again, I don't know much of the details, and neither does Linkara. But one has to wonder, you know, exactly what that Lost Galaxy movie would have been like. You know, and for me, it's kind of, you know, it kind of intrigues me a little bit, you know, because there's a lot of questions that Lost Galaxy kind of left unanswered, believe it or not, when it ended, that I think potentially someday down the road could have been answered. And I think, honestly, when one thinks about it, when one really thinks about it, this movie, potential reunion movie that they were promised, probably would have answered those questions. As a matter of fact, I think probably the biggest question anybody has had when it comes to Lost Galaxy is how the heck did Kendricks return to life, if not somehow still be somewhat alive? How did this happen? I mean, we see at the end of Lost Galaxy when they kind of return the swords to the holding place that all the people that were turned to stone got restored, and Kendricks herself was brought back to life, or restored to flesh and blood. So one has to wonder exactly how she was able to come back, but more importantly, how the heck she was able to communicate with her teammates even though she supposedly died. And one theory could be that when you take a look at how she, you know, I guess you could put it, one could say that if you take a look after she tells her friends that she'll always be there, basically always be with them, basically how her spirit seemingly somehow merges with her Quasar sword. So one has to wonder what that meant, right? Well, if you think about it maybe from a Star Wars perspective, it seems that Kendricks, when her soul, if you think about it, merged with the Quasar sword, or merged with her Quasar sword, like I said, merged with her Quasar sword, one has to think from a Star Wars kind of perspective that perhaps Kendricks became one with the morphing grid. In other words, like in Star Wars, when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, and then recently in The Last Jedi, you know, Luke Skywalker, when they all passed on and became one with the Force. Same with Anakin Skywalker, aka Darth Vader, when he redeemed himself at the end of Return of the Jedi. They all became one with the Force. The souls basically merged and became one with the Source. So one has to think that perhaps that's kind of what happened with Kendricks. That she didn't, but in this case, it's not like she totally died or anything, but her soul was still, when she said, hey, I'll always be with you, basically her soul became part of merged with the quasar stable, became part of the morphing grid, and that she was always with them. Which would explain why all of a sudden, even after she ended up being, sacrificing herself, I should say, she kind of sounded like she was now wise and everything, like she was all spiritual before merging with the sword. And one has to think that along the lines that when she became one with the sword and thus became part of the morphing grid, their version of the Force, or so when you think of it from a Star Wars perspective, that she gained all the knowledge that was needed to help them out. Like she gained the abilities to talk with them in their dreams, pass on her morpher like she did to the former astronomer, and all that. So you have to think maybe that's probably what it played a key part in the movie itself. That part of the main plot device for this movie would have been trying to answer how Kendricks was able to come back to life, and how Kendricks was able to do all these things even though she supposedly sacrificed herself, only to find out that maybe from Kendricks herself that she became one with the morphing grid. She became one basically with their interpretation of the Force, so she was able to help them out because she was now given the wisdom of the past warriors that had come before them with those quasar, that had come before them that had yielded those quasar swords. So one has to think maybe that would have been one of the plot points right there. I'm starting to look at my time here. I got to get back inside. Alright, but anyway, one has to think that might have been one of the plot points right there. Along with possibly either maybe Trakina coming back, because when one looks at Trakina's Revenge, that's a good title for a two-parter, yeah, but it's also a title that sounds like it could be part of, could be connected to a movie. So one has to think that Lost Galaxy would have had the reunion movie would have been Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, Trakina's Revenge. And maybe there was more to it than just, a crossover or anything. Maybe the crossover wasn't even in the script. And again, perhaps we would have found out more about, how Kendricks survived, how she was able to come back to life, how she was able to basically communicate with her friends and all that. And again, my assumption is when you think about it, she became one with the morphing grid. She became one with the Force in their case. In the case of Power Rangers, she became one with their interpretation of the Force, the morphing grid. And this is why she was able to, I guess, be able to communicate with them the way she did. So it's just speculation, but one has to think if Lost Galaxy was supposed to get a movie, a reunion movie, that this would have been part of answering those questions. Now, a lot of questions that were left unanswered, like I said, for example, with Kendricks, they would have been answered here with this movie. But we don't know that. We don't know if that would have happened or not. So, but again, it's just mere speculation, and I think it's probably the best, most reasonable explanation. But what do you guys think? Do you think if Lost Galaxy would have gotten that reunion movie that Linkara talked about in his history of Power Rangers, when he talked about, Lightspeed Rescue and the two-part of Trakina's Revenge, do you think perhaps this reunion movie that he talked about would have been exactly maybe what I'm speculating on it could have been? Or do you think it could have been something different? Or do you think it would have answered or touched upon some of the things I just mentioned? Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I got to get back into work, and I'll talk to y'all later.